So, we kind of felt like there was a little unfinished disagreement between Sasha and Brian on Sasha's involvement and effectiveness. So, Brian, you were about to respond. Do you remember what you were going to say?
Sure, I can recap what Sasha was talking about. Actually, do you mind saying that again so we're all on the same page?
I've been a fight. Is this on?
No.
Hello. Hi everyone. I've been a fighter on student worker rights all year. Just because the report hasn't been published yet doesn't mean that the work hasn't been done. I've started the conversation on student worker rights and I'm ready to finish it. I won't take the insinuation that I haven't done enough for those individuals lying down. The reason that the people that you've talked to weren't reached out to is because I won't accept the notion that talking to those people could jeopardize their jobs. I'm trying to help student workers, not get them fired.
I'm not talking.
Yeah, I completely understand that you don't want to jeopardize the jobs of RAs on campus. But like I said, can you guys hear me? Like I said upstairs, you said you didn't want to jeopardize the RA's jobs. I totally understand that. But we need to make sure that the folks who are leading the fight to increase stipends for RAs, they're already jeopardizing their job. So it would not jeopardize the job to reach out to them.
The thing is that you're only talking about the part of the solution that includes paying these people more. I think that's really important, but it's really not sufficient. These student workers are being mistreated in ways that I personally find unconscionable. So you're only talking about the money that they're being paid. I'm talking about the way that they're treated.
I think that's a really great point. I mean, they get paid $250 a month. If you were to divide that by all the hours they work every single day, that'd be pennies. That'd be way below minimum wage. So I think fighting for an RA stipend increase to $400 is 100% legitimate.
Okay. So one question that came up on Twitter during the debate was how all of you would change our campus to make it more accessible for students with disabilities. All of you can take a chance at that. We can start with Martin since he wasn't in the last round.
So students with disabilities on campus, we have to be mindful that some of the buildings here are they're national landmarks and we can't touch them as of right now. But we also have to be really mindful in continuing the talks of educating students all around campus about disabilities. I know that many in the audience may not know, but American University is ADA. They do have ADA certification at the university. I think the next step is to make sure that we are able to expand that to the whole entire general public and make sure that everyone knows about that, but also taking the next steps to make sure that we are being proactive with the administration to make sure that students are actually going to be able to go to classes in buildings that they're allowed to go to. And we also have to be mindful that a lot of disabilities are not physical. They're hidden. You can't see them. So we have to be able to address that, and that's why I want to make sure that we implement events with RHA and make sure that we educate the whole entire community here at American University.
In small ways, I've already been fighting for students with disabilities. When I worked on reforming academic grievance policy, I made sure that it included students with physical and hidden disabilities and mental illnesses. So I know what it feels like to be fighting that in a small way, and I want to bring that to a bigger picture. When I talk about appointing a director of diversity and inclusion, that's not just minorities on this campus based on their ethnicity. That's also based on their disabilities and other factors about them that make them unique from the general population of the student body. I want to empower that director to pursue initiatives that affect every single member of that community.
Students with disabilities on campus are hurting. A lot of them don't have the academic support to thrive to the fullest potential. A lot of students with disabilities also, Hearst Building doesn't technically even follow ADA law. So we need to make sure that students with physical disabilities are getting support in every way they can. But I want to briefly talk about students with mental health issues because that goes along with disabilities. There was a survey in 2013 that showed that 32% of students on campus had severe depression to the point where they felt unable to function. Over half had overwhelming anxiety. To be completely frank, we know that there have been attempted suicides on this campus. DW had 4 suicides this year, and nationally 1,100 students commit suicide in college. This is a huge issue that we failed to tackle head on. So one thing I would push for, one, we need to reduce the wait times for appointments in the counseling center by hiring more staff, absolutely. We also need to make sure that we implement a peer-to-peer counseling system, training students to provide the counseling. Number 2, we have to have more events and open dialogues on campus to help reduce stigma, because stigma is still a huge part on campus. We also need to improve understanding of how mental health works. Listen, I'm really open about this because I think it helps reduce stigma, but I have mental health issues. And every day, me personally and a lot of my friends, I see how hard it is to not get the help they deserve from the counseling center. We also need to make sure that students with mental health issues are getting the help they need on the academic side. If you break your arm, if you get a flu, that is an excuse for an excused absence, a late assignment, but not necessarily if you have a mental health emergency, you won't necessarily get that excused absence. You might necessarily get that late assignment. So we need to make sure that students with mental health issues are getting the help they need. They can't wait, and neither should we.
Thank you. So, for everybody, and we're going to start with Martin again, we've noticed that in some of your platforms and campaigns, you've mentioned that you want to be more active with club sports, and that there's, in a sense, that they're being mistreated by the university. So we'd like you to elaborate on what these issues seem to be, and also how we're going to take steps to alleviate them of those problems.
Thank you for that question. I believe that without my efforts to meet with the numerous club sports on campus, this would not be a topic of discussion here this election season. I believe that I've met with a majority of the club sports teams. I have had really great conversations on their wants and what they need. I know that my whole platform is creating the American dream. And for club sports, that's how they found their niche, by being part of something that they can foster community, be able to hang out, interact over something that they really care about. For me, it was representing students, and it always has been. So I feel that we need to do great steps. We need to make sure that they have a seat at the table. I want to create a directorship for club sports, and we have to be able to really incorporate athletics in general into this discussion, because no matter whether it's varsity athletes or club sports, we need to make sure that funding for the last 10 years, no increases for these clubs. We need to make sure that we have the talks with the administration that we need to raise it, and raise it at least with the rate of inflation. So they have a more pool of being able to accept what they can do. Because a lot of club sports, such as the volleyball team, they have one net, and the net has holes in it. And that's just not acceptable for me as a student leader to not recognize that and be able to fix and change that. So that's my plan. I feel like we need to make sure that we have this whole, we need to publish what the clubs and sports need, bring them to the table, and be able to support them, and make sure that the administration is very, very cognizant to the fact that they are students of this campus, and they are, it's 500 students, over 500 students, and we need to make sure that they do have a say in a lot of decisions that we make.
Over the last few years, club sports moved from under the umbrella of student activities to athletics. And when that happened, they lost a lot of their funding, and they also failed to be able to continue to self-govern. I want to restructure club sports funding and help them self-govern so they're empowered to pursue those initiatives on their own. I want to strengthen club sports so they can do the things that they believe that they need to do. In addition, I want to make sure that concussion awareness becomes a serious discussion on this campus. Concussions are a serious health problem, and they also can present mental health problems as well. We need to be more aware of those, and we need to make sure that our club sports teams are educated about the dangers of concussions.
Club sports on campus for too long have been ignored. The athletics department has not been willing to open up their budgets and make sure that they get more funding. So club sports on campus are fundamentally underfunded. They're always busy fundraising rather than practicing so they can do the best that they can. They can be the best team that they can be. They've also not been given the tools they need to thrive. AUCC clubs, the leaders, get training on how to run a club. But if you're a club sport leader, you're not necessarily getting that training. We need to make sure that we're supporting them in every way that we can, push the athletics department to make sure that they're giving them the money they need and the support that they need.
Martin, do you want to say something else?
Can I respond? This is directed to Sasha. Two-part question. One is the director of student rights. I feel like club sports would fall into that sphere. I want to know what have you done to make sure that you have advocated for those students. I want to know what you have done to make sure. Ooh, I just went puberty. Sorry. I want to know what you have done to address the needs of making sure that concussions is, because I don't know if you know this, it's considered medical treatment, and how the university is able to change the discussion from that. And the second part of that question, and more of a response, club sports do self-governing. They spend a lot of money out of their pocket to make sure that they are able to run and continue the discussions within their own clubs and sports. I know that the crew team just recently told me that they spend with dues $300, and then they have to spend money to make sure that they are able to fund for their boats, for their oars, which are $350 each. And the boats are way more expensive than that, including sailing. Sailing, they're looking into getting new boats, and you know, we have turned the cheek to club sports, and we need to bring them to the forefront of the issues. So, do you have a response to that?
First of all, I'd like to say I'm not 100% sure that you know what the Director of Student Rights does. The Director of Student Rights advocates for students who have their rights that are being infringed upon. So there's a statement of student rights that was released last year, and club sports actually doesn't fall under that, so it wasn't really in my control. When we're talking about rights, we're talking about free speech and fair treatment. We aren't talking.
This is not fair treatment.
We're talking about fair treatment based on like ethnicity and race and gender, not based on your club sports affiliation. I understand that club sports are important, but it's just not what my job was this year. It doesn't mean that I don't care about it, and it doesn't mean that I don't understand that process. When I talk about restructuring self-governance, I don't mean that you haven't done it already, because I think that's incredibly important. I mean that we need to make that stronger, because unfortunately, as you've talked about, there's still a lot of problems, and I want to make sure that club sports are able to effectively self-govern, instead of spending their time doing things that aren't actually getting done.
So we have one more question that came up on Twitter, like just a couple minutes ago. And so it was, what will each of you say to the Board of Trustees next semester when divestment is reconsidered? So we can start with
Well, most of you don't know my position on divestment, so here it is. I do support partial divestment. That might hinder votes, whatever, because of my personal opinion. I believe that in the fall, we need to make sure that we are able to start being a symbolic representation of starting discussions with the administration and be able to show them that we are taking the preliminary steps to make sure that we can go into full divestment. This takes time. Advocacy takes time, coalition takes time, and we need to make sure that we are advocating on behalf of fossil-free AU and being able to make sure the board reconsiders, but at least we can actually tell them that we are making progress and we are able to make sure that we are taking the right steps in order to make sure that we as a university are able to move forward from something that is really important.
Over 80% of students support full divestment from fossil fuels at American universities. In November, the board voted not to divest from fossil fuels, and then they insulted us further by publishing a document that was 4 pages long, single-spaced, and filled with legal jargon that regular students don't understand. It was insulting to our student body that they didn't think it was important enough to tell us exactly why they chose to go against our wishes. As student government president, I'm not going to pretend that I was on the forefront of the fight for divestment. It doesn't mean that I don't care about it. It just means that I'm not going to use that for political points, because I think that's really insulting to the people that have been fighting for this since they got to this campus. As student government president, I'll make sure that those student leaders are able to focus on making sure that we're ready when the next 2 years come around and we're ready to divest from fossil fuels.
For me, climate change is a personal issue. I'm from Miami, and when I go back home for the breaks, I see the effects of rising waters. My mom was born in Colombia, my dad was born in Honduras, and when I visit sometimes back in the summers, they tell me, how horrible natural catastrophes are and the first-hand effects of climate change. Over the past year, I've been working with Fossil Free AU to keep pushing for divestment, and as student government president, I will continue to do that, stand hand in hand with them, continue to make sure that the board of trustees is feeling the pressure. We made abundantly clear that divestment is an issue that students care about, that we want to keep on pushing for, but they haven't gotten the message. We need to keep pushing it until it happens.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to move into a stage of questions and answers for the audience themselves. So if you have any pressing questions that you'd like to ask the candidate, you can just meet up in the front next to Guy. He has the Abe Lincoln hat, and just line up next to him.
Hi everybody. Hi candidates, thank you for being here to speak to us tonight. I know it's difficult conditions, but if you could try to speak a little louder for our friends in the back, that would be deeply appreciated. That's an issue of access. So, I'm the Executive Director of AU Queers and Allies. We are the only student-led queer organization on campus. This year for endorsements, we decided to not put out a call for endorsements and instead waited for candidates to come to us. Because we believe that as queer students on this campus, we shouldn't have to come to the people that run our organization. They should be coming to us to help support us. So I'd like to thank Brian and Sasha both for writing wonderful letters about why they wanted to support Queers and Allies and for coming to our organization to ask for endorsement. What I would like to hear from all three candidates tonight, I don't want empty promises. I don't think anybody in this audience does. What are you going to do for me and the other queer students on this campus? There's a lot of us. What solid, tangible things are you going to do for us before we have to come to you to support us, recognize our voices, and not just make sure we're at the table, but make sure you're taking care of us and our needs? Thank you very much.
We're going to switch it up. We're going to start with Brian this time.
Absolutely. Lex, you're a powerhouse. I totally agree. There is a myth on this campus that AU is LGBTQ friendly. I think it's fair to say, comparatively speaking to other institutions, that we're LD friendly, but when it comes to BTQ, we have a long way to go. As a bisexual student, I've faced biphobia firsthand. But I don't have it that bad comparatively speaking. Trans students on this campus have been ignored for way too long. I've seen firsthand, and I talked about this upstairs during the in-studio debate. I had the American Constitution last semester, and my professor said a transphobic comment. He misgendered Chelsea Manning, and after I corrected him, he continued to misgender her. We need to make sure that professors are trained, and one thing I'm going to be pushing for is for safe space training for all faculty and staff on this campus. Because it's time that professors know how to treat queer students on campus. Queer students deserve to feel comfortable in their own classroom. We also need to make sure that the student body as a whole understands the difference between sex and gender, because absolutely there's horrible transphobia among the student body. I've seen it. A lot of my trans friends have told me how terrible it is. So we need to make sure that we're working with Queers and Allies next year to make sure that we are able to educate students on the difference between sex and gender and the nuances of trans identity. But it's not just trans identities. It's a long list of other identities that have been ignored on this campus, and we need to make sure that students are educated on this.
As student government president, I'll never claim to be an expert on identities that I don't have. I think that's really insulting to the people that have that identity, and I just won't do it. Lex, Brian described you as a powerhouse, and I completely agree. I want to make sure that people like yourself are able to do the initiatives that you believe are completely possible. I'm not going to propose solutions that I think are necessary because I'm not a member of Queers and Allies, and I don't truly understand the issues that queer students on this campus are facing. As a student government president, I will appoint that director of diversity and inclusion so that those students are able to make their voice heard in a way that it never has been before. I want to make sure that that student is able to fight for those issues on this campus every single day.
Thank you for your question, I appreciate it. I wanted to state that being a member of the LGBT community, I know what it is. Which is why as student government president, when we are talking about the revitalization of MGC, we're going to make sure that we give Queers and Allies and other organizations in the same sphere a place where they are able to meet, first off. They're able to make sure that you are having a safe space here on campus where you can openly discuss your ideas, to make events, to make sure, just like Brian and Sasha said, to educate the whole entire campus community of the things that we have been facing here at American University. Because at AU, we are friendly, we're LGBTQ friendly in my opinion, but in the real world, we're not. We need to make sure that we are changing the culture, not only here, but nationally. And that's the first step I wanted to take as student government president, along with making sure that events to educate the public about what we face is something that's at the forefront of issues.
Okay, we'll have the next question.
Thank you. Hey everyone. So we've talked a lot about different minority groups and the issues they face and how student government would play a role in addressing those. But over the past few years, there's been very little. There has been discussions. I've seen it mostly outside of SG. But there's been little discussion about political diversity and how certain political groups, particularly conservatives, are being mistreated, disrespected, or ignored for their beliefs, both outside and in the classroom. So if you believe this is an issue surrounding political diversity or the lack thereof, and if so, how would you involve SG in addressing it?
Brian?
Absolutely, that's a really great question. Political diversity is something that we're lacking here in America. I don't know the statistic of how many students on campus identify as conservative, but it's a huge number. First off, I think it's important to make sure that we are empowering the political diversity on campus. First off, because we sort of live in this liberal bubble, and once we graduate from AU, students who identify as liberal aren't really going to understand why they stand for what they stand for. We need to make sure that we're constantly having debates on this campus. That's why we go to college, so we can defend our beliefs and continue to talk about them. I'm from Miami, a very Republican area, and sometimes I sort of miss having those political debates because here at AU, I sort of disagree with everyone and everything. So we need to make sure that we're empowering. How would I do that? I would appoint a cabinet member of political diversity, and they would work with every political organization on campus to find ways, creative ways, to empower political diversity on campus. I also think that we need to work more with AU College Republicans. Student government has done very little with them in terms of co-sponsorships and other partnerships. So, yeah, political diversity is going to be a huge priority. We need to make sure that we're empowering that and we're elevating that forward.
Okay, Sasha?
Political diversity is incredibly important to me because I believe it's part of the educational process. When our views aren't challenged, we don't get the opportunity to really grow our education. I am committed to making sure that college Republicans and college Democrats are able to come together and make that discussion a priority, both in student government and outside of it, because I believe that it is part of what makes AU unique, that we are able to have those discussions. And I don't think that we've been able to do that in the past few years, and I think that's a real shame. I do want to increase co-sponsorships, but I also want to make sure that student government is an active supporter of both groups on campus. I'll never promise to agree with every student here, but I promise to ruthlessly defend your right to free speech and your political ideas.
Martin?
So I'm going to ask a question, and this might be personal. If you don't want to participate, you don't need to. If you're a liberal or a Democrat, please raise your hand. If you're a moderate or an independent, please raise your hand. If you're a college Republican, please raise your hand. As you can tell, the majority of this campus is towards Democrats. I myself am a college Republican. I want to make sure that I experienced this firsthand. I know that in debates in class, all the way to just having personal discussions, my personal beliefs are always called into question. That's why when I just talked about divestment, I am just letting everyone know that as student government president, you need to have someone who's honest and is going to be able to stick with their word in what they want to do. I never said that I did not support full divestment, but a first step in going into that is to make sure that we go to partial divestment. We need to make sure that political inclusion is a huge topic that we address in the campus community. We need to take both the Democrats, and college Republicans and be able to foster a relationship with student government to be able to host events across campus, making sure that it's being able to be as inclusive as possible and making sure that we're able to have discussions in a safe space where we're able to broadcast our ideas, because this is Washington, D.C. We're the next leaders of the generation. If we're able to, solve, I don't know, any type of issue, we can be able to work together to creating a bipartisan thing that's not being able to be done here on campus and to the nation abroad. So, thank you.
Hello guys, I just want to first thank you all for all your hard work on this campaign the past couple weeks. I think we as students really appreciate how willing to be involved in this process that you guys are. I think it's really respectable, so thank you. So my first question is to Martin Slezak. Recently, members of your campaign have come under fire by several members of this community and this campus for using racial slurs and other offensive material. And you've campaigned personally on a platform of inclusiveness and involvement and respect for diversity. So, do you think that there's a disconnect there? What have you done essentially to deal with members of your campaign that have acted in this way? Have you responded in a way that's responsible and respectful in how you are running your campaign, or how have you responded anyway?
Well, obviously this is a question and fire I wanted to mention. Yes, it is true. A member of my staff has broadcasted their own personal views in my chat. For me, I did not address it personally. I am the type of person when I have a problem with someone, I address it on the side. This member was one of my really close friends. I called him to questions and actions, and he got reprimanded, and he's no longer part of my staff. Yes, he is listed, but he is no longer part of my staff. I believe that this is unacceptable here at university. This is the 21st century. We need to make sure that we're able to have this discussion, and I wanted to make sure that this is important. We need to make sure that this instance is never going to be happening again. This is the whole point of correcting people who make these derogatory remarks and being able to change the way that they act and the way that they feel, and being able to continue the conversation of limiting how far free speech can go. So I hope that answers your question.
Mental health is an issue that has been on SG's back burner for years and years, and I really think that that's a shame. And I know that each of you have positions on your platform, ideas that you want to pursue to make that better. But I want to not hear rhetoric for a second. I want to hear specifics about what you want to do to improve mental health on campus.
Yep. Absolutely will. I understand your frustration because this is an issue that should have been dealt years ago. We should have tackled this issue a long time ago. The statistics that I threw out earlier, those are from 2013. We're in 2015 right now. So we've known that students with severe mental health issues exist on campus, and that the wait time for an appointment with a counseling center is way too long. So we need to make sure that A, we're fighting to reduce the wait times by hiring more staff and implementing a peer-to-peer counseling system. We also need to make sure that we ease the culture of busyness and stress on this campus by having a self-care awareness campaign. I would work with the Office of Campus Life to make self-care a social norm on this campus. So to make sure that we're all taking care of ourselves, because I think if we do that, that's one way we can help reduce the really huge rates of mental health issues on this campus. I'd also work with professors to make sure that when they talk about mental health in the classroom, it's done in an appropriate fashion. I heard students come to me during this campaign, and they told me that one of their professors said that the student had PTSD in front of the entire classroom, absolutely ignoring their privacy. So we need to make sure that professors know how to talk about this issue. And then lastly, we need to have more open dialogues to help improve understanding and reduce stigma. But my big point is, AU is incredibly reactive. We wait for issues to explode in our faces, and then we do something. On sexual assault prevention, we didn't do anything until the EI emails were leaked. I want to make sure that when it comes to mental health, we don't make the same mistake. It should not take a suicide for us to act on mental health.
Well, I'd like to just jump in real quick. You said you wanted to make sure that you could speak with the professors. How are you going to get in touch with all of the professors? Is there going to be some type of training that the professors are going to have to go to? Because there are many professors on campus for many students. So how are you going to make this feasible for the professors?
That's a really great question. So one thing I'm going to be pushing for is safe space training for all faculty and staff on campus. It would be comprehensive. So it would talk about LGBTQ issues, like we were talking about earlier. It would talk about mental health and how professors should be talking about mental health in the classroom, and issues of race. So this would be a comprehensive safe space training for all professors. I know this would be really difficult to get accomplished, but you know, that's why we run for student government president, to get the hard things done.
Sasha?
First, I'd like to increase the amount of care that the counseling center is able to provide, both by increasing their space and also by increasing the number of counselors that are there. Because 2 to 4 week wait times is simply unacceptable. I'd also like to partner with campus organizations that are able to do that kind of awareness training better than student government can. I also want to work on trigger warnings on syllabi. Brian talked vaguely about making sure that those professors are able to talk about this in a tangible way. I want to make sure that I go through the provost's office and start to mandate trigger warnings on syllabi. Because our academic experience shouldn't be tainted by the fact that we find certain topics uncomfortable. And finally, I want to address Brian's talk about peer-to-peer counseling. As peers, we aren't experts on mental health. And you know that's true because when your friends come to you, you want to send them up the ladder to someone else who feels like an expert on these issues. When my friends come to me, I want to be a support for them, but I can't be their counselor. It's not good for me, and frankly, I don't believe that it's good enough for them. I don't think that peer-to-peer counseling is sufficient for our students. I really don't think it's good enough. We need to make sure that we have trained professionals that are helping our student body.
Yeah, I mean, Sasha, I completely agree. The first thing I'm going to be pushing for is hiring more professional staff because, you know, that's what students do.
Well, it's a good question, huh? Yeah, absolutely.
I'd work with Dr. Hansen to make sure that the counseling center is getting more funding so they can hire more staff. On sexual assault prevention, we hired a victim's advocate, and we had been pushing that for a while. But all of a sudden, the Office of Campus Life has the money to hire a victim's advocate. So obviously, when we're pushing to make sure that we hire more counselors or any staff, it happens. We just need to empower and elevate student voice to get things done. But to your question, or to your claim, absolutely. I wish we could have more professional staff training students. I would love that more than student staff. But the problem is, right now, a lot of students, I've heard the average wait time for an appointment with the counseling center is 4 weeks. 4 weeks. That's ridiculous. I've heard stories of students having to wait 3 months with the counseling center. That's ridiculous. You can die in those 3 months. We need to make sure that we're reducing the wait time. So absolutely, I'll push for more staff. But the thing is, we know that even if we hire more staff, the wait times are still going to be long. So to help reduce that even further, I'd push for a peer-to-peer counseling system. And Sasha, this isn't a new idea. A lot of universities have peer-to-peer counseling to make sure that students, especially psychology students, are getting the experience that they should be getting out of the college education. Also, in that training for students, it is trained that, hey, if the situation gets out of hand, you refer it to professional staff. So it's not going to be a liability or a danger to the campus. We would just make sure that these student counselors know when they can't handle it anymore.
So you talked about peer-to-peer counseling as an educational process, but when it comes to my mental health, I don't want some counselor in training helping me. I want to make sure that that person is an absolute professional. I won't settle for half-done solutions on these issues. I think peer-to-peer counseling isn't good enough for our student body.
Again, I stress, we need to make sure that we're going to be pushing for professional staff first. If that doesn't happen, or if the result of that is still very long wait time, we have to push for peer-to-peer counseling system. And Sasha, I understand. I have mental health issues. I have depression and anxiety, and I have to deal with it every single day. I've been multiple times throughout my life, I've been suicidal. So don't tell me how mental health works. I know exactly how it works. Thank you very much.
Okay, Martin, would you like to respond?
Of course I'd like to respond. So for me, I personally would like to say that I'm not an expert on this, but I know for a fact that this affects many students across campus. So as someone who's going to be in a leadership position, this is definitely something that I am going to be passionate about. A lot of my friends have dealt with mental health issues. This becomes a very personal topic for me. That ensures accountability will be taking place. So to address Will's question, I want to issue a soft campaign, of a Be Aware campaign. Because I feel like the first step is to be able to show everyone across campus to be a little bit more respectful when we're talking to people, because you don't know what they're going through. We don't know what everybody's going through on campus. We need to make sure that we're able to continue the discussions with students across campus and being able to issue an awareness campaign, because this is something that is targeting everybody on this campus. It's not just one person, it's not somebody who has it, it's everyone. It's being educated about the topic.
Okay. We're going to take the next question, and we're going to ask the three of you to keep your responses to a minute for each of your responses from this question on, just because we want to try to get in as many people as possible. So we're going to take the next question now.
I am a club sports athlete, and I am among over 500 student athletes in club sports on this campus who have not been represented by our student government in years past. Every student organization on this campus has a voice in student government through club council, IFC, and various other groups. Every single student organization besides club sports. I am tired of a student government and a university that is comfortable ignoring issues that my program faces. It is my right as a student to have a program that I can be a part of that allows me to feel comfortable and part of the AU community. To say club sport participants don't deserve to be in the conversation of equal treatment, that offends me. My program deserves equal treatment as a student organization that we are not getting right now. So don't sit there and tell me that club sports don't fall under student rights. To echo an earlier statement, club sports does not actively endorse candidates because thus far SG has not been an advocate for club sports. Martin Slezak is the only candidate to reach out to us to express desire to help us, so thank you. With that, what would you do, each of the candidates, to ensure that our program gets the funding and consideration from the administration that we desperately need and deserve?
Okay, we'll start with Martin.
With the help of the club sports teams, I was issued their report to the Board of Trustees. In that document, they have a lot of statistics that frighten me. This campus community has for far too long turned their cheek to issues that we have ignored. We need to make sure that, to answer your question, Dom, I know that we need to make sure we bring everyone to the forefront of issues and being able to include you into the conversation. Because I'm not part of club sports, I'm not, but I know that there are many students here on campus that are. And the leaders of those organizations needs to be having a place at the table for someone to actively advocate for them in the boardroom to make sure that, you know, the last 10 years, club sports have not been paid attention to, and it's been only $55,000 that's been distributed between 28 club sports. That is tremendously disappointing. We need to make sure that we raise it with at least inflation as a starting point. And I will pledge that I will make sure that I will bring that to the Board of Trustees to make sure that club sports are actually going to get more funding in years to come.
Okay. Sasha?
Hi. I just want to address your point about student rights before we move into what I'm planning on doing for club sports. Student rights protect students who are being discriminated against, like things like race, ethnicity, gender, political identity. I would love it if I could have protected every single student on this campus for every single thing that they're affiliated with, but it doesn't work like that. The Statement of Student Rights doesn't protect students just based on the fact that they're associated with a club sport. I'm not saying that it's not important, I'm saying that it's not part of student rights. Finally, what I want to talk about is the fact that I want to work with club sports leaders so that they're able to get the funding that they deserve. I want to help club sports go to the administration so that they're able to restructure their funding and they're able to get the help that they need in order to pursue the initiatives that they need to pursue. They deserve that funding. And finally, I want to start the conversation about concussions and make sure that club sports are able to work with their organizations and make sure that concussions aren't the problem that they have been over the last few years, because we haven't talked about it enough, and I think it's really a shame.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Club sports absolutely have been just put on the sidelines and not been talked enough about. I do want to echo, just repeat one point that you said, though. You said that none of the candidates other than Martin have reached out to Club Sports. I have reached out to Club Sports, but a lot of them haven't responded back to me, including the rugby team. I actually spoke with them yesterday. And they told me how horrible it is, the situations that you guys have to go through, having to fundraise all the time, rather than being able to practice for your next tournament. And also, you guys aren't given the tools you guys need to thrive as a club sport. A lot of AUCC clubs get proper training to make sure they know how to run the organization. But club sports don't get the training they need and deserve to make sure that they're thriving to the fullest potential.
Okay, I'm sorry, we got to move on to the next question.
Hey guys, how are you? So just for a quick bit of context, as a member of the IFC Executive Board, I've been working to combat sexual assault by step training chapters, for example, and that's something I'm in the midst of doing now. And that's not where it's going to stop on our end, but I often feel like we're demonized and often left holding the bag. So this is actually a question more directed towards Senator Paz. I feel like your platform speaks in very general senses about Greek life, just looking to help and not necessarily standing with us, helping us. And I feel like student government doesn't have a real track record of working with fraternities, with sororities on sexual assault. So I was hoping that you could clear that up a little bit because, yeah please.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. For too long, Greek life on this campus has been scapegoated and blamed for all the sexual assaults that happen on this campus. Not only is that unfair to all the Greek communities on campus, but it's also inaccurate. We know that sexual assaults happen all over campus, not just in Greek life communities. We need to make sure that instead of blaming Greek life and having them be part of the problem, we need to make sure that they're part of the solution. So one thing as student government president, the first thing I would do is make sure that I'm speaking to all Greek life leaders, to make sure that they're an ally in the fight against sexual violence on campus. We need to make sure that Greek life is adding weight in our pushes to get the administration to mandate consent education, bystander intervention education for all students, including incoming students. So one thing I would do is, first day, speak to all Greek life leaders, sign a petition to make sure that Gail Hansen and the rest of the administration knows exactly that all of Greek life is behind these recommendations to get the administration to act on sexual violence. But not only do I think that Greek life...
I'm sorry, we're going to have to move on to Sasha now. No, I'm sorry, you got to move on to Sasha.
Thank you for your question, Tom. As student government president, I will always stand with Greek life. I think Greek life has been left out not only on the conversation about sexual assault, but also they haven't been given the support that they need for their philanthropies and other kinds of co-sponsorships. I believe that Greek life is incredibly important to this campus because 30% of our campus wears letters, and it's time student government recognized that. We need to be an ally with Greek life on sexual assault awareness and prevention. I don't think that there's really a way around that. I believe that starting that consent-based training in Greek life has been incredibly important, but I want to take that further. I want to make sure that that's mandated for all students.
I'd like to echo everyone's points made here, but in a more general sense, I really wanted to address formalizing ties with Greek life. I feel like campus community, each individual sorority, fraternity, or professional social, each one has a certain tradition and value that they hold, and I want to tailor their experience here at American University to what is unique to them and what they need. What is the needs that they need? And in terms of sexual assault prevention, huge shout out to ZBT to make sure that they were the first fraternity here on campus to actually institute a whole program around it and being able to host an event to make sure that they are doing it. And I think we need to learn from previous leaders and previous fraternities and being able to push the conversation and being able to show that all fraternities and sororities here on campus, we're able to stand with them and show them that we support them no matter what.
Okay, we'll take the next question.
My question is actually directed to Rory and Sasha. Earlier in the televised portion tonight, you mentioned that you didn't think racism was anymore. As someone who's a part of several racial minorities on this campus, that worries me. That makes me feel like our student leaders are out of touch with the experiences that their peers are having day to day. Personally on this campus, I've seen my friends be racially profiled by American University public safety officers. my body and my sexuality is hypersexualized because of my race. I've experienced racist comments, I've seen victimization. So, what are you, and this is open to all the candidates, what do you all want to do that's concrete and tangible to really engage the minority populations here on this campus? Because right now, there are two people who sit, I believe it's on the cultural, and I forget the other portion of it, but it's a coalition, and they are really not included in student government. And if you ask them personally, they will tell you not. So what is your plan to fix that?
So, first I just want to address the point that I'm out of touch. I grew up in a community that was really diverse, and racism wasn't really a problem in my hometown. I came to American University and experienced something far different than I'd ever experienced before. I'm not saying that that's an excuse, I'm just giving you some clarification. I'm not out of touch with what's going on at American University. I've learned a lot over the last 2 years. My eyes have been opened. I'm not going to claim that I wasn't ignorant of this issue before, but I'm telling you that I am incredibly aware now, and I'm devoted to making this a priority. As Student Government President, I will make sure that the Ethnic and Cultural Coalition is empowered, but also that we have a Director of Diversity and Inclusion who's fighting for issues of inclusion on this campus every single day.
Okay. Ryan?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Jay. Students of color on this campus are struggling. A lot of them don't feel fully included, a lot of them don't feel comfortable, and a lot of them don't even feel safe. Last Friday, there was a rally here in MDC in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter food drive. And during, while it was happening, someone yik-yacked, "These mofos need to be hung." So clearly, students of color have every right to feel unsafe and uncomfortable on this campus because they are receiving death threats. We need to make sure that the next SU president is fiery and passionate and won't stop until students of color are building a pathway to being more safe and comfortable on campus. So first thing I would do is work with the Office of the Provost to make sure that we're hiring more professors of color. If you look at SPA, there's literally 0 Latino professors, and there's only a handful of black professors. When it comes to professor diversity, it's very little. So we need to make sure that professors reflect the diversity of AU. When you look at professors, I want to make sure...
I'm sorry, we're going to have to move on to...
Can I just close this point really quick?
no, I'm going to have to move on to Mark. Sorry.
I'm echoing everyone's sentiments. I feel like we need to make sure that we put this as a forefront of our issue. I've dealt with this firsthand with my staff, so I know that this is a real topic here on campus. I'm going to combat that. We need to make sure that when we have SG relations, we need to make sure that it's for all minorities, and being able to make sure that students here on campus are becoming educated, being able to address the needs of all minorities, and making sure that we are all going to fight. I believe that I'm speaking for all of us. We're all going to fight to make sure that we're going to put more teachers of diverse backgrounds into the classroom. We need to make sure that we are having that conversation with everyone in the general population, but also taking the conversation and turning it into action, because we're tired. We are tired of continuously being ignored. We need to make sure that we are being able to foster the discussion in a broader sense of being able to interact with many different administrators.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to move on to the next question now.
My question is directed towards Senator Paz. Given your allegedly active support for sexual assault survivors and sexual harassment victims, what is your response to the fact that you allegedly made unwanted romantic or sexual moves on 4 students before, during, and after you were in Eagle Summit OL, as well as with 2 students who have claimed they have been experienced coercive, unwanted sexual experiences with you? And how can you be such an advocate for sexual assault prevention and awareness when you yourself have been accused of the very thing you claim to be fighting?
I heard these claims, it came to my attention a few days ago, and all I can say is that I don't know where these comments are coming from, but the one thing I really want to stress is that my entire life I've been fighting hard for sexual assault prevention. As a friend who knows a lot of survivors on this campus, I know 100% the trauma of sexual violence on this campus. And all I can say is that my entire life I've only been having consensual relationships because this is something that's really close to you.
Okay, next question please.
Hi, so throughout your campaign
during the debate town hall, we've heard a lot of the same answers from all three of you saying, I care about this issue, and giving the same responses to how you're going to fix the problems on our campus. What makes you different from the two other people running for the student government president? And I would really appreciate hearing something other than, I'm more passionate than the other two.
Okay, for this last question, we're going to see if you guys can do that in 30 seconds since we're about to get shut down. So, Martin.
If you have looked at my issues on my Facebook page, it's very broad. It's a lot of issues because there's multiple issues that face this campus. And we need to make sure that we're fostering the discussion not only with financial aid and divestment and sexual assault prevention, because they are really important issues, but we have to be able to go back to club sports, making sure we include a shuttle route to students off campus because they can go to class and be able to foster relationships. I am different because I am going for the students. I want to make sure I create the American dream. I'm here for you.
Thank you, Martin. Can we move on to Sasha, please?
Thank you so much for this question. The thing that makes me different from my opponents is that I wasn't planning on running for student government since I got to this campus. I never really thought this was an option for me. I started to care about student government late last year because I found issues that I really cared about, and I'd fallen in love with this university. I'm not doing this for political points. I'm not doing this for an office upstairs. I'm doing this because I care deeply about the student body and I care deeply about the issues that I'm fighting.
All right, thank you, Sasha. Ryan?
There are a lot of huge issues on this campus. Students with severe mental health issues aren't getting the help they need. AU Central is broken, and students with serious financial aid issues aren't getting the financial guidance that they deserve. Greek Life, student media, and clubs aren't getting the space they deserve and the support they need. The students of color don't feel comfortable, safe on this campus. We need to make sure that we truly make this their home away from home. So the next SU president has to be someone that's fiery and passionate on these issues and won't stop until the job gets done.
Ryan? All right. So thanks to all of our candidates for being here tonight and sticking around for this portion, and thanks to all of you for coming and asking such great questions.
I don't know if it was him, but...
I've been Michaela Amos.
And I'm Jalen Chapman. Thank you very much. This concludes our debate.
And make sure to stick around for Mission Improbable right after this. Thanks, guys.